Hello and welcome to the Hurling Show on Off the Ball. We're here every Friday at 12:30 to go through all the talking points in the hurling. I'm joined this week by Michael Verney again. Michael, how are you?
Good, Shane. Good to be here talking about hurling and not talking about the circus that is Offaly football. So it's grand just to focus on the small ball.
Well, you're a former Offaly hurler, but surely you were watching what was happening with Stephen Wallace getting the chop there during the week. What was your quick thoughts on it? Because we do want to get to the hurling.
I was there on Sunday, and it was just one of the lowest points. Like, it was just the standard of football was so poor. Then to see the pictures of Wallace emerging in the stand, looking like what you could only describe as maybe a vigilante, he looked like in the stand. It was just, it's really sad, because over the last couple of years it's just been negativity after negativity, and we just were shooting ourselves in the foot, I think, at board level as well. But hopefully we can get somebody in and try and lift things up a little. It's going to be very difficult though.
So we just saw the first weekend in the hurling championship with Offaly putting up, I'd say, a good show against Galway. First half, I think there was only a point in it with about 32 or 3 minutes gone. All of a sudden, Joseph Cooney got a goal, and Offaly looked like they needed half-time badly. Second half got away from them. But overall, I would say that's green shoots compared to last year, losing 33 points to 111 and having 2 sweepers.
Yeah, it was just probably a bit of naivety just before half-time. And if you can get to the break in good condition, there's so much more positivity going out for the second half. They had that sucker punch going in before half time, and it's hard to lift it then. It's hard to lift it when you're 5 down. Even though Joe Bergen's goal did get them back into it, Galway kind of just looked a little different. They looked like there was green flags on their minds like nearly every time they got the ball, and they definitely weren't at full tilt. And only for our goalkeeper to cut, realistically, like, it wouldn't have been beyond belief to say that they could have had 8 goals, and then it would have just been a disaster, you know?
It would, but I think overall it was positive, and like Dublin gave a great display against Kilkenny, and Kilkenny showed their heart once more. Now we're going to look at all the games coming up this weekend. There's 2 Leinster and 2 Munster. We'll dig into those, and we have the 1990 All-Ireland winning hurling captain Tomás Mulcahy to come on the line shortly. But first of all, we have to have a quick look back at what Tommy Walsh, how he described the scene at Dublin versus Kilkenny and his entrance into Parnell Park.
Tommy Walsh, hello.
Joe, welcome to Parnell Park. The sun is out, Joe, the people are out, and we'll have a full house, I'd say, in a few minutes here. It's filling up nicely, and the Dubs are just after coming out to a loud cheer.
I'm told you arrived at 5 a.m. this morning.
No, well, I was up here since last night, Joe. My uncle is part of the Whitehall Column Kills Club just down the road, and the lip sync competition. So I was asked just to help him out and be a judge. And the funny thing about it was, Joe, the guys that won, there were 2 guys dressed up as Rihanna. And I was coming in the turnstiles today, and who let me in the turnstiles? Only your man dressed up as Rihanna. I said to him he was looking better last night. So yeah, I had the fry this morning in my Uncle William's house. The eggs, like my granny used to make them, they were done in Kerrygold butter and all, so it was a great start to the day.
That's Tommy, if you're alright. Have you ever had some unbelievable costumes, Michael?
I probably have had a few. The funny thing there, though, is I think Joe was just saying hello and expecting a hello back, but he got a little more than he was bargaining for. But that's Tommy in a nutshell. I thought the nub of the story was going to be that he ended up on stage doing a lip sync. But back to your original question, yeah, a few unusual costumes, but we'd probably be better off talking about them.
Lay it on us. Come on, what have you done?
Oh, be the Lord.
I'll tell you my one now.
Go on.
It was a Halloween one in Bursley back in 2005 or something like that, and I dressed up as my old lad, who's, you know, always managing underage teams or whatever. So he'd be dressed in a tracksuit, shoes of course underneath it, sort of a gilet top. He'd have the clipboard, and he's bald except for around here he has a band of hair, so I actually shaved that part of the hair there. It looked absolutely outrageous, and I won the costume of the night. But
Halloween is a great
heavy price to pay.
I kind of drew on a beard. I can't grow a beard, so I drew on a beard and had a Kerry jersey and went as Paul Galvin one night, and did reasonably okay actually. Yeah. Not in the competition stakes, but in the other stakes I did okay. Yeah,
so go home alone, right,
we nearly go again.
Right. So tell us, you didn't go to the Offaly versus Galway game the other night. Where were you?
I was at an event called Scrapper Mania in Dublin. It's an indie wrestling show, over the top rope wrestling. I'm not ashamed to say, I probably should have said it last Friday, but I'm not ashamed to say it now. I'd be a big wrestling mark all my life, but I had it booked months ago before the Offaly game was sorted, but I had lots of spies and different people relaying to me how Offaly went. But yeah, I think you were trying to embarrass me there, but I'm not too embarrassed.
No, I can see by your expression you are rightly embarrassed. On the line now we have 1990 All-Ireland winning captain Tomas Mulcahy. Tomas, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Good, very good. So you're here to talk about the launch of Corja Corky. So it was Cork supporters, trying to fundraise, and you're trying to take it on to the next level. Can you explain to us the scenario with Corja Corky?
Yeah, Corja Corky is set up as a total independent body from the Cork County Board. It's a mix of former players and a couple of business people within Cork City and County. It's a very, very strong, I suppose, panel of business people as well that's connected to Corja Corky. But the real aim, realistically, is maybe brand Cork. We look at what's happening around the country. We look at what's happening. You take the likes of Dublin with their sponsorship and their coaching agreements over the last number of years. And, I think recently they came out with a list maybe of 10 additional sponsors tagged on to AIG. And we just feel maybe down in Cork there's a huge opportunity. There's a huge opportunity to promote brand Cork even further. And that's not taken away from anything that's gone on in the past. That's not taken away from anything the Cork County Board are doing at the moment. Because if you ask any of the managers, anything they want from Cork County Board has been granted. But we feel maybe this is very much in its infancy. It's very much a long-term project. And maybe the goal over the next number of months is just to get the awareness out there, just to raise the awareness with the business community, and maybe set a few targets for the long-term basis, on the basis of maybe training facilities. I won't call it a centre of excellence, but I'd look at it as a training grounds. I think that's the biggest issue that is facing managers all over the country because of the advent of sooner championship matches coming into play, National League starting earlier. Teams are going back much earlier at the worst times of the year for training purposes, and trying to get training facilities is very, very hard. And the managers in Cork were probably scratching their head over the last number of months because they're going to clubs looking for facilities. And maybe the short term is tying up arrangements with the colleges down here, CIT, UCC, who have fantastic facilities, and tie in arrangements that inter-county teams can use those training facilities on a regular basis and obviously be rewarded for that as well.
Mm. And who do you have getting involved? So there's yourself, Kieran Kingston, Dermot O'Sullivan, or some of the names that I've seen been mentioned.
Yeah, Ted Owens is the chairman of the group. He's been formerly a Cork player himself. Was the physical training coach to the team back in 1999 when they won the All Ireland. You have Conor Coonan, the ex-Cork football manager there as well, and the ex-Cork football player himself. You have Tom Kenny involved in the equation as well. But it isn't just about us, the 10 or 12. We'll be reaching out to everybody, right? And the launch tonight is about anybody that put on a Cork jersey. Those are from back in 1952 are welcome tonight. We will have some of those people that are still alive with us tonight, up to 66, up to the 3 in a row, 76, 77, 78, right through the 80s, 84, 86, 90, then your 2004 and 2005 team. So it's a mix of the whole generation of Cork over those number of years, just to get the awareness out there. And obviously then, it isn't just about the hurling and football. There's camogie and ladies football included there as well. So we'll be reaching out to everybody within Cork community itself, the GA community, but on the longer term then the business community as well. And
would you feel that Cork are a sleeping giant? Because, in football there was the All-Ireland title in 2010. In hurling you have to go back to 2005, and there's just been one All-Ireland final appearance since then. And for such a big county with so many GA participants, it seems like Cork are coming up short.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah. Maybe at times we don't set our standards high enough, There was a time when you went out in the first round of the championship, it wasn't about winning Munster titles, it was about winning All Irelands, right? And, and that should be the goal for every team. And I'm sure that's the goal for Sunday when they go out and face Clare, right? To win this match and get on the road to win an All Ireland title, because that's what we were all born and bred of, and brought up with in Cork, was actually making sure we were in Thurles in early July and making sure that we were in Croke Park in September, whether it was hurling or football. And maybe the ladies camogie and the football have put us to shame over the last number of years with their success. I mean, they've been incredible ambassadors as well for Cork. And we just needed to move it to another level, and a lot more initiatives involved around schools and what's happening in coaches and development squads and stuff like that as well. We'll come into the fray, I'm sure, over the next number of months and maybe over the next number of years. That will help brand Cork. It's a huge brand. I mean, not too many counties have that opportunity with the ladies football, camogie, Gaelic football and hurling to be at a kind of a very, very high level and a high standard, you know, and I think the opportunity is there maybe just to take it up another notch.
So it's Cork versus Clare this weekend in the opening round of Munster, and I was looking through the stats, and Cork have met Clare 11 times this millennium. Clare have only won once, and that was the All-Ireland final in 2013. Do you see Cork beating Clare this weekend? Because in general, Clare seem to have had that one season in 2013, and 5 or 6 years either side of that, they've done nothing.
Yeah, I think, I mean, everybody has been talking about the way the new structure of the championship is set up at the moment. I think home advantage is crucial. And maybe Dublin, maybe last weekend, didn't take the opportunity for home advantage. And even though they had a majority to play, and you kind of maybe would say that that's going to be a costly loss. And I think the same is for Cork next weekend against Clare. Home advantage has to come for us. They're coming in after Cork are coming in after kind of in a different league campaign. I know John Myler and his team would have tried out an awful lot of players, but I fancy Cork to win on Sunday, because if they don't, they're going to put themselves under severe pressure going up to Tipperary the following week to take on Tipperary and Thurles.
Tomás, I'm just wondering, what was the mood like when Kieran Kingston left in Cork? There was kind of general shock around the rest of the country. What was the mood like in Cork? Have there been any any main reasons come to light as why he stepped away? I know it was a big shock to most people after winning the Munster title last year.
Look, I suppose at this stage, look, Kieran made up his own decision on that basis. I mean, and Kieran rightly came out and said he was very committed to business and stuff like that as well. And I think there was an additional added pressure as well. He had his own son, Shane, involved as well, right? And I think it might have made it a little bit difficult in that situation as well, you know. And but business reasons, it's a huge commitment being manager of a team this day and age as well. And when he was having to travel overseas and stuff like that. And people kind of forget it wasn't just Kieran was there for 1 year. He'd been there as well with Jimmy Barry Murphy as well, right, as coach under Jimmy Barry Murphy as well. So he had 4 or 5 years really at the top level, at inter-county level with Cork, you know, so that's a huge commitment in anyone's life.
And I wonder, Tomás, your own clubman, Patrick Horgan, he's been exceptional over the years and he's one of the highest scorers in championship history. Do you think he's the sort, like, is he the marquee forward that Cork have, or do you think around him Conor Lehane, the likes of Alan Cadigan as well, Seamus Harnedy, do they have the sort of forward line that can win in All-Ireland?
You mentioned 2013. I don't think we were too far away from it then. At that time, maybe the stroke of the clock, maybe, and that went against us. Yeah, Patrick is a fantastic player. He's unbelievable ability, very, very skillful player. You put Conor Lehane into the equation as well, and you put Alan Cadigan and these guys, and I think, they're a very, very talented squad. I think the basis of where Cork are building from was last year is the new guys that they brought into the equation. The likes of Mark Coleman, Dara Fitzgibbon at midfield, Colm Spillane at cornerback. I think the big thing for Cork this weekend and for the summer is that these guys repeat where they were last year, because we know what Patrick Horgan can do. We know what an Alan Cadigan can do. It's a kind of second-year syndrome now for the new guys, you know, and they need to push on now as well. And if that's the case, they look back at the All-Ireland semi-final and say to themselves, we were very disappointed losing to Waterford, but we weren't that far away from reaching an All-Ireland final either. But last year's gone. You've got to move on. There's a new challenge in 2018.
I think probably one of the most pleasing aspects was how much Patrick Horgan and Conor Lehane seemed to take games with the scruff of the neck last year. Like I suppose the criticism always was that maybe when the hard ball was there to be won, that maybe they didn't win it as much as maybe people would have liked. But those two were awesome last year, and they really stood up when they were needed. And even Patrick Horgan, he got 6 points from play in defeat in the All-Ireland semi-final as well. So if those two guys can kind of get back to that type of form and have a few other lads pitching in, and Alan Cadigan on his day is like unbelievably dangerous. Shane Kingston probably hasn't seen as much time this year as well. And if like Dara Fitzgibbon and Mark Coleman can show that form again, Cork will be very, very dangerous, definitely going forward.
Yeah, Tomás? I thought you wanted to come in there, Tomás. But if I was a Cork person, looking back to the All-Ireland semi-final last year, Austin Gleeson probably should have got the road for a helmet pull. Damien Cahalane gets, he deserves to go for 2 yellow cards as well. If I was a Cork person, I'd be thinking we should have been in an All-Ireland final last year. Tomás, do you see it as a bit of a missed opportunity last year?
I do, being honest with you, because they don't come around too often. I mean, you get yourself to an All-Ireland semi-final and there to be won, and when you're bringing in a lot of new guys and stuff like that, there's no fear, there's no kind of pressure on them, and these guys hurled out of their socks last year. I mean, Mark Holman was a dream, and Fitzgibbon, and Spillane, wing back or cornerback, as I said, and you tie in the experience there that you mentioned, and like. That is the beauty, I think Patrick Horgan and Lehan and a couple of the older guys, they're getting to 29 and 30 years of age, and they now need to take on the leadership role. They're no longer the guys that are sitting inside corner forward waiting for things to happen. The dependency now is with these guys, you make it happen and you bring the younger guys into play and you take on the leadership role, you take on the responsibility, and that's what I expect to see from Cork on Sunday.
We did a bit of a free taker poll there. I did it on my own account there earlier just to see who is the current best free taker in the game. There was only 4 options allowed, so I didn't actually get a chance to put Patrick Horgan in or Shane Dooley in, for example. But there is the poll. So TJ Reid with 69%, Joe Canning 12%, Seamus Callanan 5%, 14% for Pádraig Mahoney. Tomás, what do you make of that?
It's incredible. But sure, look, I mean, you look at TJ Reid. I mean, what puts TJ Reid maybe above everybody else for me is when it comes to the one-on-ones, right? The penalties, because we've seen a lot of them being missed, but I've rarely seen TJ missing any of those. And like that's the beauty of the game of hurling. That is an unbelievable skill and art to be able to step back a couple of feet from the ball, the run, the lift, and the hit. And the power that he gets into his strike is just incredible. And I know, fellas will say there are other guys out there. A lot of teams are bringing goalkeepers up as well. But when this rule was brought in, they thought everybody is going to be so easy for somebody to put a ball inside to the back of the net. And we've seen an awful lot of guys missing it. TJ Reid is just incredible. Patrick Horgan has been fantastic. Seamus Callanan, Shane Dooley, all those. You couldn't knock them. And in every game now, it's so important that you have a sharpshooter when you get those opportunities. Out on the sideline, 21-yard line, 14-yard line, even out to 65s. You've seen guys coming back out the field, taking 65s, even back inside their own defensive line, taking the long-range frees. And probably TJ, though, is correct. He's right up there at the top.
I think the free-taking one is something that's really been stark in the past week, because if you look at the Kilkenny game against Dublin, so Paul Ryan has been an excellent free taker, and I remember a couple of years ago in a club game for Ballyboden against Uskula, he scored 117 and I don't think he missed one free, so he's absolutely capable of it. But a couple of frees didn't happen for him. David Tracy's been very good on the frees, and in the club final this year in horrendous conditions he got 12 from 12. So that was tough on Dublin, but for Kilkenny, TJ Reid doesn't miss. And then Owen Murphy scored 4 frees from his own half, and I would say that all 4 of those frees, if they're inside your own 65, they're not actually scoring opportunities. So Kilkenny got 4 points from nothing.
I'll be honest, it's a big bugbear. I mean, I just don't think you should physically be able to hit the ball from the 45 over the bar. And you never really were before. I just think that when a corner forward fouls or a corner back, I don't think you should be able to score from 30 or 35 yards out from your goal. That's just my own opinion. But just on TJ as well, TJ is it's like a laser beam. It's so low as well. Yeah. It's so low over the crossbar. It's about a hurl and a half's height over the crossbar, and there's no deviation with wind. Like other free takers, maybe the ball can hang in the wind. Pádraig Mahoney's maybe would hang a bit more, small bit more. TJ's are straight and true, and once a foul is given away, like you're just automatically waiting for the puck out and the white flag being raised.
Tomás, just two questions for you before we go then. Number one, do you think that the sliotar needs to be changed so that these frees can't be scored? And also, just how do you see Cork versus Clare going this Sunday?
Well, I mean, you're talking about sliotars and...
no better county than Cork to meddle with them.
Pardon?
No better county than Cork to meddle with sliotars, actually.
Sure, there was a day when we played against the old enemy Tipperary, and they used to put a bit of whitewash on the old ones, and soak them in water overnight so they would be heavy for the following day, so you wouldn't be able to puck them as far, So you never copped onto that one, I don't think, did you?
No, we're too stupid.
No, look, I mean, there's been a lot being said about it, right? But look, it's like the golf technology is changing all the time. Look at the hurleys. Look at some of the guys that are using the Cool Tech hurley to puck out the sliotar from a goalkeeper position because they can get better accuracy than a one with a bigger boss, and they can land it into guys' hands and stuff like that, right? So things are changing all the time, but it's still a skill that you have to put a ball down and being able to put it over the bar, and let's not take away from the game on that basis. And I think, 40 yards up and goal. We've seen it in the past. Jock Cunningham had an unbelievable puck out, Ken Hogan, Tipperary, all these guys had massive, massive puck outs as well. But I just think it makes for a more exciting game when you can get the ball down the field much quicker.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Tomás, and best of luck with the Corja Corky fundraising.
Thanks very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think my issue, Shane, is just the regularity that it's happening.
Well, 4 times Owen Murphy scored him from his own half, and we must point out he's absolutely unbelievable.
He's a brilliant striker of a ball, yeah, but there's a lot of really good strikers of the ball, so the chance of it happening more and more are being raised an awful lot. That's my only issue with it. I just feel it's happening too much, and I'm not saying that we want to slow down the game at all. I just 25 grams or 50 grams in weight just makes such a difference. Remember when we had that bouncy ball about 10 years ago, and it was just like ping pong. That was obviously too much, and now we just need to find a balance maybe between the older ball and the newer ball, just to make sure that it's not travelling, I would say, too far.
Well, now, just to look forward to the games this weekend, I want to touch on the sweepers and actually how they were used last weekend. And we're going to have Dublin away to Wexford this weekend. And I think that's going to be a huge match, and it's going to dictate a lot for both teams' seasons. But I thought it was very interesting how Dublin set up their sweeper system. So if we look at Dublin in blue here, this is more or less how Dublin set up. So there was a 3-man inside line, and there was 3-man half forward, and you had... So basically, Owen O'Donnell was man marking TJ there, and Sean Moran was sweeping behind him. Now, I thought it was interesting that Sean Moran was more or less able to play pretty close to the 45. The reason being that Kilkenny played 3 inside for the most part. So that means that there's not too much space in there, that's pretty cluttered, so you can afford to be a bit further out. Now, at the other end, this is Kilkenny and how they set up. So you had Paul Ryan playing mostly more or less there on the 6-yard box. You had Liam Rush there with Pádraig Walsh on him, and then you had Paddy Deegan as the spare man. Now, it was very difficult for Paddy Deegan to cover all this space because there was no clutter here. So he was more or less playing on the 21 for a huge amount of the time. And we have a couple of pictures, I think, just to illustrate that. Again, I'm not going to win any photography awards for this, but we've got a picture, I think, of Paddy Deegan. So you can see him there. You've got players on the 21-yard line. That's Rush and Pádraig Walsh. Owen Murphy is trotting back after hitting a free. And that's Paddy Deegan in front. Look at the amount of space he has to try and cover off either side. If a good ball goes in, what chance has he of getting that? Very little. And usually one forward will go left. So we'll just say, there's a defender here. One Dublin forward will go here. One will go here. Where does Paddy Deegan go? Yeah, he's in awful trouble. It's very, very difficult. And I've marked Paul Ryan in that situation where they start on the edge of the square, and there used to be 2 or 3 of them, and they'd all go in different directions. And you're just, it takes that split second, but they have the yard got. So he was kind of negated here completely by the way they played. And they had the out ball as well of having Rush there, that if they wanted to lamp in a high ball, they knew that he was going to be capable of at least breaking even in there. And I think Dublin probably would have got more joy if their decision making was a little bit better. Now, they had some younger guys in there, and it mustn't be forgot that Kilkenny had 7 debutants, but Dublin's kind of plan would be to have lads coming through on the burst as well, and to be honest, that's kind of the game plan for most teams. So for this weekend, we're going to see something fairly similar. I'd imagine that that Dublin will more or less have the same inside track there, and Sean Murphy will be in this area trying to sweep again, and Dublin will probably match up like that. It'll probably be hugely crowded in the middle zone. But what I found very interesting is the change with Sean Murphy. So he was the sweeper of the year last year, maybe tied the Burka. We won't split hairs over that. But I did out the stats last year. In Wexford's most recent game, that was against Kilkenny. The league match last year where they met Kilkenny in the league quarter-final, he had 29 touches of the ball. So 29 possessions. If you have 29 possessions coming out here as the spare man, it's no wonder it's no wonder they had their first win there in God knows how many years. And so, but this year, so that was 29 touches. This year, at pretty much the same stage of the year, how many possessions do you think he had? I would say single figures. Looking at the game, 9. I thought single figures. Yeah. It was 9, and 4 times he lost the ball. And that's not down to him, that's down to the fact that the whole team is kind of misfiring to some degree. So if Sean Murphy is going to be here and it's going to be similar setup where Dublin are like that, he's going to find it very tough to get into the game. And also to get on the ball, to do more damage. Sean Murphy would like to be a little bit further out here.
He doesn't want to be picking up the ball necessarily on his 14 or 21 because it's much more difficult, whereas if you pick it up 30 yards out, Dublin will definitely try and get around him. And the funny thing is, like, he's played there for a while now, teams are starting to read it an awful lot better. Like Kilkenny, the team that don't do tactics, have read it.
The greatest tacticians of all time.
Exactly, yeah. And like what happened with Tadhg de Búrca last year in that qualifier game would never happen I don't think will ever happen with Kilkenny again, where they make a hero out of someone. So other teams are starting to cotton on to the way Murphy is playing and will try and work around him basically an awful lot more. And then by dragging him closer to goals as well, like, he's there, it's cover, but there's still a great chance of getting a goal once you're in around the 14 or 21. Whereas if it's all clogged up out here, there's really no chance of getting in.
Do you know that Wexford haven't beaten Dublin in the Championship since 2008? So Dublin have won 4 of the last 5 games, and there was a draw in there as well.
That's right. I think they beat them in no, sorry, I'm wrong. Yeah, Dublin beat them in the replay when they won the Leinster in 13. Yeah.
Do you give Dublin a good chance here? Because Rush was incredibly effective at full forward. If you feed him, and you don't just need to go high ball. He's quite a skillful big man. But Keeney might be out as well. We saw him going off with a shoulder injury, it seemed. Yeah,
they're saying he's out for 2 weeks. I always question when you hear that coming out that he's out for 2 weeks, and there's a chance that he could be in a centre forward at the weekend. But he just, like, 35, he used every bit of experience he had. Now, Cillian Buckley has sat back here and controlled games, and fair enough, he got on a good bit of ball, but Keeney was unbelievably effective in the role that he played, and it was a leadership role as well. He was just standing up when they needed to get a couple of scores in the first half. He was there to get it. If he's missing, I just felt in the first half, I thought I saw Whiteley taking a few shots from here, you know, under pressure and hooked, and the midfielders were kind of taking shots, you know, under pressure, and a lot of them, they were half hooked and dropped in around the 21, or a good few balls dropped into Murphy, and there was a good few soft wides as well. There's still that bit of inexperience in Dublin, and that's why they need that figurehead centre forward. And I think he's a game breaker whether he plays or not, really.
Okay, so I'm going to throw something at you here, and the suggestion that I would make is that perhaps Dublin have the best defence in the Championship. Now,
that's a big assumption to make after one game.
Half backline, I should say, actually. Chris Crummy, unbelievable. I think we saw that the last day. Sean Moran is very, very good at the sweeper. Owen O'Donnell, absolutely exceptional defender.
TJ didn't get a sniff, really even though he came up and got that great point under pressure when they needed one near the end.
Hard to keep a good man down. Yeah. And then Chris Barrett as well. So an exceptional half back line, and I wonder how are Wexford going to counteract that, because they'll have Chin there, they'll have probably Jack O'Connor, maybe Aidan Nolan in and out of there. Rory O'Connor, I think, is the key. Now, Conor MacDonald and Lee Chin really struggled to get into their most recent league game against Kilkenny in that semi-final. I think Rory O'Connor is the key here, and at just, I think, 19 years of age, is that even a bit of a worry for Wexford?
It probably is a bit, but he just has an X factor. Like, he was, I think, 4 weeks after doing the leaving cert last year, started against Waterford, and he was just brilliant. Like usually we've seen it with particularly a couple of Waterford players actually in the past, where I think it was Brian O'Halloran got a start in All-Ireland semi-final against Tip. You know, he's taken off after 25 minutes as a young fella. It's very, very difficult to do. Rory O'Connor was just like a seamless transition to senior level, and he just has that bit of X factor. He can score basically from anywhere in around here. If he gets in around goal, you know, all the better. But just takes a bit of pressure off Chin. Chin can still contribute massively, obviously. MacDonald is so dangerous. It's still like that, an unbelievable hand at the edge of the square. It'd be interesting to see with Jack O'Connor, like, he was totally negated under the puckouts against Kilkenny after beating Aidan Hart to 4 or 5 kind of the weekend before that. So it'd be interesting to see what tactic they play there. I'd be surprised if they bombard too much high ball down, because Crummy and Barrett were just lapping that up the last day. So it's going to be an interesting battle. There are 4 or 5 nice Wexford forwards that I've named as well. So
call it. Who's going to win?
I think Wexford will win, to be honest with you. I don't think we should run away with ourselves on Dublin's performance last weekend. I think they're coming, and by all accounts the vibes out of Dublin are really, really good. I haven't heard a bad word said about the Gilroy regime, but I just think Wexford are kind of a step ahead based on what they've done last year and what they've done in stages in the league this year as well. And I kind of think the league semi-final is kind of a stick that Davy will have to beat these lads. Like, there hadn't really been a performance like that since he came in. Yeah. And without putting too fine a point in it, they kind of lay down a small bit.
Oh, 100%.
You know, and like, of all people, he will that will drive him nuts. And I'd be very surprised if we don't get a reaction. And down in Wexford Park as well, I think they'll be tough beating. I think over the league in the last 5 or 6 years, 70% of the home teams have won as well. And it's just, you saw how it tipped the scales in Dublin's favour a bit last week. And I just think, I'd be surprised, I think Wexford by 5 or 6.
It'll be interesting if they can get Sean Murphy into the game. Just quickly on Kilkenny and Offaly. I was very impressed with Offaly in the first half, as I said. In the second half, they drew Dan Kerms from centre forward out to midfield, which left their attack line a little bit. They struggled to win the ball up front. It's the first time they're meeting Kilkenny in the championship since 2014, when you lost by 26 points. What are you expecting here?
I think the same as the Dublin rationale that I made there. I think Kilkenny will come on an awful lot for that. They were kind of bottled up, and I think they finished with their best team. Like, regardless of the league and a few lads kind of coming through, the likes of Morrissey and these lads, they finished with Paul Murphy, Colin Fennelly, Conor Fogarty, or three outstanding players to bring on. I would imagine they will all start. Then they have probably their best 15 on the field. I think they'll come on a couple of points. I think I wouldn't read too much into the Offaly Kilkenny game in the league, because if you did, we'd be like really up there.
Yeah, just lost by 2 points.
Lost by 2 points, and we're in it until the 71st minute. I just want that competitive kind of thing again. We were competitive at the weekend, maybe just up until that goal before half time. I think we can be competitive again, and we have the kind of ball winners, particularly in the forward line, to trouble Kilkenny, or to at least kind of go at them in the air. But I'd be surprised if it wasn't Kilkenny by 8 or 9, just being realistic.
Yeah, and an interesting stat is that the last time Offaly beat Kilkenny in the championship, they won the All-Ireland that year in 1998. A few months later, Brian Cody is installed as manager, and it's been nothing but misery since.
That's right. That was after losing to Kilkenny, of course, in the Leinster final, when we were running around like sheep in a heap. With
so that was the last
fellow Tipperary man.
Yeah, that's the last time you give the manager a bullet. So maybe it's good things to come with Offaly football. That was Michael Babs Keaton who, called you sheep in a heap, and rightly so.
Probably given on that day, he probably was right. In fairness,
yeah. So we've looked at 3 of the 4 games so far. We previewed Clare versus Cork with Tomás Mulcahy. Limerick versus Tipperary, would you say that's the most mouth-watering game of the weekend? They had a league semi-final that went to extra time, and Tipperary just squeaked through.
Yeah, I was sitting down beside you down in the press box that evening. It was kind of a slow burner. Once it got to the 50th minute, I thought it really kind of took off. Limerick missed a couple of good goal chances that night. I think Limerick have one of the best squads around.
Yeah, they've arguably a better squad than Tipperary, but maybe not a better 15.
Probably not. No, like as someone said to me recently, their first 15 and their second 15, they're the 2 strongest 15s that you could make. So I think I actually think Tip and Limerick are probably the top 2 in Munster. And funnily enough, I think Cork and Clare are possibly the bottom 2 in Munster. That's just my own opinion.
Waterford?
I put them in third. Yeah, I think it'll be Tip, Limerick, Waterford. But this weekend's game is really, really interesting. Like, if Tip have guys coming back, Dan McCormack, Shamie Callan,
Bonner Maher, Noel McGrath.
How fit are they? Particularly Callan and Dan McCormack. Bonner is.
No, I can attest for Dan McCormack, because I was down watching my hometown Borrisoleigh play against Silvermines in a North game there a few weeks ago, and he scored 5 points from play, and he was motoring around like nobody's business. And he also did a beautiful kind of jab lift and reverse hand pass straight into his brother's hand during the game. So he actually, I've no concerns about him.
You know, confidence is high when things like that are going on anyway. Yeah.
But what I'm very interested with this game is to see who's learned more. Tipperary's full back line was absolutely exposed in that game, and you know, I've pointed out before how I think that Michael Breen should have been put there from the start of the year. How Pádraig Maher possibly might have to go there, as he did late on in the league final when Tipperary were flailing. Now, we have a couple of screenshots showing the Tipperary full back line and how it's been exposed, and they'll probably come up in a second there now. But as well, I think Michael Cahill is out with a hamstring injury. Yeah. I think Cahill Barrett, who's another option in the full back line.
That could be a blessing in disguise if he goes back cornerback in a way.
We'll come back to that in a second. So we have an image on screen there which shows Tipperary have just taken a puck out, and this is early on in the game. Limerick have won possession, and if you look at the screen there on the right hand side, so that's Tipperary's half back line that's out at midfield. Pádraig Maher, who's closest to the midfield. You have the right wing back out at the far side, and I think that might be Tomás Hamill, who's no longer actually on the panel this side. So just if we move on to the next picture, when the ball is actually delivered in, that's Tipperary's defence. So if you're a backman there, I mean, you're in a world of trouble if Galan catches that ball there. I think it's Galan. Look at Seamus Flanagan coming through. Look behind you. You've got Barry Murphy as well. That's not how the Tipperary backline should set up. And you can see Pádraig Maher is on the far left of the screen. He's trying to get back from where he was at midfield. I mean, that's Tipperary in disarray. That is not how you set up under your own puck out.
No, and the lessons weren't learned from that game, because whether it was a week or 2 weeks after, the same thing happened against Kilkenny, except even worse, because there was probably only 2 men under that high ball when it came down. So the way Tip set up is going to be really interesting. I don't know, like, will they go with James Barry again? It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one on a lot of fronts. I'd imagine his confidence is low enough because, to be honest, he's kind of been hung out to dry a couple of times in my opinion.
He's been left kind of left to drown in a huge amount of space, and I think we've probably a couple of more pictures there showing how he's been dragged out out from that full back line. And like, if you were a full back, the one thing you want is your cornerbacks either side of you. You nearly want to be able to stick your hand out and touch the 2 boys. You want your centre back in front of you, the 2 wing backs, all nice and compact. If you look at this photo here, the person about to receive possession up at the far flank near the stand, that's Seamus Flanagan, the full forward. And there's James Barry, who has reluctantly followed him from the full back line all the way about 55 yards out to the field. That is not where you want your full back.
No, I think he carried him, he ran with the ball the whole way into the 21, didn't he? And looped back around and put it over the bar. Yeah, it's a disaster of a position to be in. Like, so difficult to defend against that. There's nobody near him. And that's why when Cathal Barrett was corner back, usually he tucked in close to him and was able to cover for him. And having somebody with those legs is massive, because that's probably something they've been lacking in the corner positions as well. So that's not a scenario James Barry wants to be in.
And the likes of Dublin have learned that you don't do that you set up a good platform, as we've kind of explained on the tactics board before. And like, Kilkenny got their goal near the end, but I mean, it was let's call it a spade. That was a foul as well. Yeah, it was a free out.
Realistically, like, yeah.
What I'd also look at quickly is just there's a picture of how Tipperary are continuing to sky the ball into the forward line. Now, we showed it from the league final. We're going to show it from specifically the league semi-final, just because it is Tip versus Limerick, and we want to show exactly how they're doing that. So look, that is a huge long ball. I think it was actually a short puck out to James Barry, and he had no options. Nobody was coming short, so he blasted it. So you've 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Limerick defenders, 3 Tipperary attackers. You're not winning that ball. I don't care how skillful you are.
No, but that's not how we've seen Tipperary play over the last couple of years. And it almost looked like a deliberate, I'll be honest with you, it almost looked like a deliberate negative tactic.
Well, I mean, from putting my Tipperary hat on, I hope that they weren't showing their hand during the league, and that there's going to be variety in the play, because I've put that to Michael Ryan. He said there will be variety. Just on the Limerick team, so they got that far in the league without the Napier players. You've got the likes of Shane Dowling, Kevin Downs. You've got David Dempsey and the 2 Caseys, Peter and Mike, to come in as well. Who of those would you think would come in?
Ooh, difficult question. I would say
Peter Casey
is likely to come in. Yeah, he's a real handful, and particularly if they're going to be trying to move Tipperary around, they want someone with legs and who can score, and he can definitely do that as well. Dempsey's a kind of a good ball winner in the half line. So as I say, the chance he come in. I'm not sure if Dowling will start. Maybe not this game. If he does, it'll probably be around the middle of the field, I would say. I don't think he'll be in the forward line. Maybe half forward, but I don't think he'll start. I think he'll come in maybe, and I think Downs is a likely candidate to come in around full forward as well.
So we've got a video coming up now of Kieran Joyce, who kind of spoke to us. He's one of, so just to read it out here, he was up with Littlewoods during the week. So he's one of Kilkenny's most stylish players on and off the field, and he was in Dublin to launch Littlewood Ireland's #Style of Play campaign for the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship and the Style My Wall competition, which has a grand prize valued at 100,000 or 10,000, I should say. For more information, follow Littlewoods Ireland on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and blog.littlewoodsIreland.ie. So just before we go to that,
I know Kieran, he'd like to think he's a style icon.
Yeah, I had a few pops at him, all right. But who's going to win this game, Limerick against Tipperary?
I think Tipperary just about. I think it'd be very, very tight and very high scoring, and I'd expect 3 or 4 goals. If Tipperary can just get back into the kind of 20-yard snappy kind of balls that we're used to around the forward line, I think they'll win. If they go with this aerial bombardment that we've been seeing, I think Limerick will edge it, but I imagine we'll see a different Tipperary.
And I'm interested to see whether Seamus Callanan or Jason Ford starts up front, and actually who's on the freeze. So when we come back on the far side, we're going to talk with Gerard Gilroy and Leon Blanche from Boyle Sports about the odds for the weekend and where you can get a bit of value. So we'll quickly have a look at Kieran Joyce here.
I still remember being sitting on the sub bench, and I seen the free obviously blown at the time, and I said, okay, Bubbles was trotting back for it. I said, okay. I was like, okay, does he have the distance? And then he struck it, and he struck it so well. I was like, oh, here we go, it's gone over. And, you know, everyone stood up, and everyone's just like, and it went so close, and then Hawkeye. And then the problem with that is it's a massive anticlimax. You know, an All-Ireland final, it's a draw, so everyone has to get into put on your gear, go back home, you know, collect your gear in City West where you usually have a banquet. You have to head home. But I suppose from my point of view, obviously we were delighted we didn't lose. But obviously Brian said afterwards, look, things have to change. You know, look, there's going to be changes. So lads, he said, look, everyone reset. And then we came in the following night. The night after, we watched the match fully. Went through the whole match. We just sat down and watched it ourselves. And then we just had said a few words and went back. And, you know, in no uncertain terms, I kind of knew myself that I would have a chance to come in, you know. And then Brian approached me then about 3 or 4 days after that. He says, look, we're planning on putting you on Bonner at the Man Markham. So, look, he says, get yourself ready, you know, and whatever was needed to do there. So he says, look, you know, there's video analysis there if you want to watch it, or, you know, however way. Certain lads, you know, will analyse and get themselves prepared in different ways. So then that 2 weeks then, you know, I was obviously in good form throughout the year. So them 2 weeks then was just kind of zoning in on obviously the All-Ireland and obviously what the job was. And sure, look, the rest is history, isn't it? And
can you believe it then that you actually went in, got man of the match?
Yeah, well, look, I suppose I was at the time. You know, sometimes when you're playing sport and you get into that sort of mindset, I knew I had an opportunity here. Obviously, I hadn't really featured much all year up in the championship, and then I knew myself, look, this is a great opportunity, and I think myself and Pádraig came in because Pádraig didn't start the replay or the first final leader, so they were the two major changes. So, you know, we came into, I suppose, a back line that had been opened up a little bit in the first game, you know, and I knew what my job was from centre back to stop ball and stop Bonner. So, you know, that's what the aim was to do, and to follow him wherever he went. And I think, I suppose we all kind of took up man marking position that day. So I think I was down full forward and corner forward there a few times with him as well. Wherever he went, I kind of followed him to a certain extent. But and then look, the way the game panned out, and then final whistle went, relief, obviously we won, and I was starting to trot over to the corner until I got an RT man coming over and called me over, and I was like, no, I'll give an interview later on, look, I just want to go celebrate with the lads. And they said, you got man of the match. And I was like, what, who, me? I was like, no. And I was like, okay, I went in, and then big turkey cock red head on me then, and you know, I was just couldn't gasping for air on you because I was completely out of breath, and then the adrenaline of it and all. But you know, it's obviously brilliant. I'd savour it, you know, for long to come. Now, the mother has the man of the match glass mantelpiece at home, so she won't be letting go of that too soon.
And you obviously would have had great times together with those Kilkenny players, and you're off the panel at this point, having retired at the end of last season. You're still only just turned 31. But I've heard some stories about the team holidays you would have had, and in particular a story in Cancun that would have involved an eating competition.
Oh yeah. Involving myself?
Involving yourself and perhaps John Mulcahy.
John Mulcahy. Oh yeah, okay.
Lasagna.
Lasagna, yeah. Who would eat the most?
Yeah. How did that pan out? Was there a concert as well?
Didn't go too well. Yeah. Some of the holidays were fantastic. You know, Cancun was all...
we want to stick with this story.
All inclusive. Cancun was all inclusive, so... I've been honest, I don't remember 100%, but I remember I came back 2 stone overweight.
Yeah.
And that was a big issue. Obviously for the dietitian, our dietitian was flat out that year trying to get us all down back into championship weight. But no, we had some great times, and I went over there. What we have with the Kilkenny panel is if lads are single and they go over in a group, we call them the Wolf Pack, similar to the what you call the film The Hangover. So that year there was about 7 of us were in the Wolf Pack, so all the single lads would just, you know, they'd all go off and do their own thing. You'd have the couples then doing their own thing and that kind of thing. And so we were a part of the Wolf Pack at that time. John Mulcahy was part of it as well, and I think Owen Murphy and Paul Murphy and a few of us. So we had a right good time, you know, obviously free drink, free food, and yeah, a lot of stories there.
And you ended up getting sick at a concert, didn't you?
That was Coco Bongo.
Yeah. So is that what it is? So you do remember it?
No, I know. I remember Coco Bongo is this nightclub in Cancun. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about your brother Dara, who's in the AFL with St Kilda. He's over there. I mean, he's not the only Irish guy there. Westmeath man Ray Kennellan is
there as well. Yeah.
How's Dara getting on? Because I saw a quote from him when he was when he said in February that if Ray got a senior debut and I didn't, I'd be happy for him, but I'd also be pissed off. There's definitely that competitiveness between us. Does that sound familiar?
Oh yeah, that's there out now. No, it's going well. I think the VFL, what himself and Ray play, is like
just the tier below.
Just the tier below the AFL. Now they train with the AFL senior team throughout the week. Then obviously they break into their own teams then at the weekend. But St Kilda at the moment, I think, are on five losses on the trot, I think. So obviously, look, there's changes acquired. So I think, look, Dara's confident he might get a run this year. From his point of view, his contract's up at the end of this year. His 2 years is up. But he's confident, and the coach has said he's going well, that he'll get a new contract. But Dara knows himself, if he doesn't make the team the next year or two, he probably never will make it. That's kind of the cycle, the way it goes. So himself and Ray are obviously very competitive. I suppose with AFL, this thing I learned, they're completely, himself and Ray play in completely different positions. They kind of specialise in certain positions then, and that's what they kind of focus on, how they play that position and that kind of thing. I think Ray has a serious engine on him, so he does an awful lot of running. He's in one of those running positions where Dara is, I think, he's more of a contested ball situation, that kind of thing, and marking players. So that obviously differs, but they obviously know what they have to do to get into the positions.
If he's a win your own ball sort of man, surely Brian Cody would be looking for him down the line, would he? Would you like to see him play for Kilkenny down the line?
I would, yeah, of course. Sure, that's. And I said to him, look, if he goes over and he has his few years, if he has his few years over there and coming back, he'll come back in serious shape. He'll come back with an awful lot of knowledge in terms of sports and and how you look after yourself. And let's say he's still only 21. If he comes back in 3 or 4 years' time at 24, 25, as you said, I made my debut in 25. He can go on and have a great couple of years. So if he wanted to do that, of course he can. And he has plenty of time, but these opportunities don't come around too long to play professional. So he's living life at the moment.
Let's talk about the current Kilkenny team. Won the league by blitzing Tipperary in the final, but just barely scraped through the Dublin game at Parnell Park. Do you think they're realistic All-Ireland contenders?
I do, if we can keep our main players injury free. I think obviously look, TJ has been fantastic the last couple of games. He was quiet now, obviously for his standards last week. Now Dublin probably had 2 players kind of nullifying him to a certain extent. But obviously look, with Paul Murphy and Colin Fennelly coming back in, an awful lot more experience. But they need probably Richie Hogan as well, to come in. There's those sort of players, down through the years, and when we were in tough positions, they turned games for us. So you need them sort of players to come in and make a difference for you. So, if we can get a full panel of players together, injury free, I think we have a great chance. A few lads have come in there, and look, our centre spine of the team is very strong. There's plenty of experience there, and we've added a few younger guys up the wings as well. So seven debutants were blooded there on Sunday. So look, that's an addition for Brian as well, because it's always a big thing to get over your first championship match. For an awful lot of lads, they'll think they get up to that level. Once you play that match, then an extra bit of confidence comes from that. So that's good for them, good for the panel. But it depends on what sort of squads that Galway and Tip have as well. They're obviously going to be very strong squads, very competitive as well. And you have Munster alone is going to be so hard to come out of. But from our point of view, obviously, look, Wexford, I think Galway will obviously be a big test in Salt Hill. That'll be interesting now where both teams are. I suppose Galway, after winning the All-Ireland, seeing will they be ready to defend it again.
And they'll really want Kilkenny, who they haven't beaten since the 2012 Leinster final.
Yeah, they will, yeah. And they'll look and set a marker down. And from Kilkenny's point of view, look, they'll probably be underdogs there. They'll love that idea of going up to Pearse Stadium and going hell for leather. And from our point of view, obviously, we have week in, week out hurling matches. So from a neutral's point of view, it's great.
And how do you feel about Galway in Kilkenny? Because certain teams have a distaste for other teams. And are Galway a team that rub you up the wrong way, or you're just used to beating them, so that's Galway? No,
I would say, look, there's obviously fierce rivalry between ourselves and Tip. Galway probably would have been a strong rivalry as well down through the years, because we lost minor All-Irelands to Galway through the years coming up, and we would have had a strong rivalry with them then at under 21 level as we were growing up as well. So, and ever since, obviously, then we've had a few All-Ireland replays with them as well. So there is a rivalry there, absolutely. And from our point of view, Galway obviously play traditional hurling. They're big, strong hurlers that will play similar to what we play. So you're also probably guaranteed a good game of hurling, against Galway, similar to when we played Tip. But we know they're big physical lads, like Johnny Glynn and a few of these lads are going around. There's not too many men that that walk around and play with other teams. So we do think, look, they are obviously going to be the after last year they were the top team. So we're obviously looking to build on that, get up to their level. And from our point of view, obviously the test in 2-3 weeks' time in Pearse Stadium will be a big one.
And Offaly this weekend, Offaly were quite good against Galway, and the game was tight for about 33-34 minutes, and then Galway pulled away and could have won by more than they did. Do you expect Kilkenny to come through that handy enough?
I don't think it'll be handy enough. I think, look, Offaly are very physical. They're going to be big as well. I suppose, look, they'll try and play similar to what Dublin done with the weekend. Probably be physical up the centre, but I do think Kilkenny have a little bit more finishers, I suppose, to a certain extent, even the lads they brought on the last day. So I do think it'll be probably nip-tuck, maybe 2 or 3 points with, let's say 50-60 minutes to go. But I do think Kilkenny probably will have the finishers to finish it off, maybe win by 5 or 6 points. So I do think, look, they will. It'll probably be nip-tuck for a while, but I do think they have the class to pull away.
And Galway will get to study this weekend and rest because they've no game. It'll be Kilkenny's 3rd game in a row when you visit Salthill the week after. Do you think that's a little bit unfair? I mean, because this is the first year of this competition, this setup, and it's possibly not suiting you for that game. No,
well, look, absolutely. But then the other caveat is then you'll have a tough championship match under your belt. And I know, look, you're turning around within a week. They probably won't do very little training, but from Galway's point of view, then they probably haven't really been tested yet either. Where Kilkenny probably have got a good test against Dublin, you'll get a test against Offaly. So they'll probably be championship sharp going into it, but whether it'll affect the legs is probably the question.
So you've this is your first season away from it, just turned 31, and you're expecting a baby girl in a few weeks.
Yeah, baby girl in about 5 weeks, I think. Yeah, so we're ready now. We have the bags packed and everything, and have the phone and speed dial. So if it happens anytime soon. But yeah, look, it's completely new territory for us.
Exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. Yeah, it's obviously daunting as well because you hear stories of you'll never get more than 4 hours sleep now again for the rest of your life. But yeah, it's.
When will you find time for a haircut?
I'll always make time for a haircut. Yeah.
So that was Kieran Joyce during the week. We've got a packed studio now all of a sudden because we're going to look through some of the betting for the weekend. We've got Leon Blanche here in the middle. How are you doing, Leon?
Not too bad, how are you?
Good. From Boyle Sports. Michael Verney is still here, and Jerry Gilroy has joined us as well.
How are you doing?
Good.
You had a championship haircut as well as Kieran Joyce.
Yeah, and a championship shave by mistake as well. I went too far and I look a bit silly. I look about 12 again. But we finished off talking about Limerick Tipperary. We'll start talking Limerick Tipperary with the odds here. I think there's a pretty good bet for the over-under in terms of total scores here, Leon.
Yeah, look, we're going 49.5 points. Under it is 10-11 and over it is 4-5. I think this could be a high-scoring game. I think you two lads are in agreement. The betting would suggest that Tipperary should see off Limerick. I think they will, personally. They're a 4-7 shot. 2 points is the handicap at even money. We've seen plenty of action in the handicap already, and most of the weight of the money is going for Tip -2 at evens. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that line moves to 3. There doesn't seem to be much support for Limerick, +2 points. And high scoring game for me, over the points, and I think Tip will cover the spread.
I think for stuff like this, right, you're looking for value. You're looking like what's going to give me the most interest and over the course of the game. If you're backing Tip at 7-4 on, you're risking all of your money and making sure that you believe in this Tip team and that the work they've done. You had a point on Twitter during the week about the Dubs game and it's showing the benefit of a good setup. Now I thought that was just a narky fan from Tip tweeting as opposed to your sports journalist / dual All-Ireland club winner using your brains to tweet, but it was clearly a dig at the backroom team in Tip.
Well, I just think that they don't put enough emphasis in how they set up tactically, because there's this kind of a traditional thing in Tipperary going back to like 5 decades ago where we're Tipperary, we don't need to train, we're Tipperary, we don't need to do tactics, we'll let our hurling do the talking. I'm sure which has annoyed Offaly people and others far and wide.
Everybody.
Pretty much everybody. But like you saw how Dublin set up against Kilkenny. They had the 3 men covering the full back line, the 3 men covering the half back line and the sweeper, and Kilkenny didn't score from play for 26 minutes. So I think that if Tipperary actually protected their back line, dropped the midfield deep, the half
forwards was heavily into his tactics and stylised hurling. So how did somebody who's the current manager who saw all that not see a bit of that and go, I'll have a little bit of that. I think there's still some of that in there, surely.
There probably was in 2016.
Definitely was in 2016.
Eamon O'Shea left at the end of 2015, and I think that there was still traces of that there in 2016. Michael Ryan definitely went for more of a route one sort of an option, manly men type thing, tip for the men as it used to be like in the day before it no longer was. So I just think that they're focusing too much on long ball, and I think they're going to struggle for that reason.
It doesn't suit them either. That sort of long ball doesn't suit them.
It's playing like Stoke City when you've Barcelona's players.
Yeah, that's not a bad point. It's just like in the 2016 All-Ireland, Callanan was going into like 50 yards of space to a lovely diagonal ball. They were pinging balls, and Noel McGrath was like orchestrating everything through. And we haven't really seen that this year, and didn't really see it last year either. So I'd imagine that they would try and go back to that. But I don't know if that's Michael Ryan's style either. Though.
So that's why I don't like him at 7-4 on. I like you're asking us to put a wedge of cash on to win a little bit back. And part of me just thinking about this the other day is like we did something with the under-21s last year and their award ceremony, and looking at the Limerick lads there and just watching the highlights over the course of the year, like they're a bunch of young lads who will benefit and who benefited last year from playing for the club and the senior team and then the under-21s the whole way through. And you're like, this is a group of players who are coming through. This system is going to suit them game after game after game after game. And I don't know, I feel like it's all set up for me for like one of those weird moments where the whole championship starts to shake, and based on nothing other than I like the fact that they've got a bunch of young lads and a bit of confidence coming, and I like them at 7-4.
I think both teams to score a goal mightn't be a bad shout either.
Or two.
Yeah,
I think there'd be a fair whack of goals. I think there'll be 3 or 4 between the two of them.
Limerick +2.
And if a goal is scored inside the first 10 minutes, we'll double all markets for every championship game. Right. So I'd agree with both of you. I think there will be goals. To go against Jer's point, I know they're young, Limerick, and they will benefit from games, but I think they might get better as the season progresses.
That's definitely true,
I think now is the time to beat them. I think they will get better, they'll get more experience, and I think even though what you lads have said about the tip style, I just think they'll have enough nous to be able to go to Limerick and beat them.
They might do. They've beaten them the last 2 times, but they lost the 2 previous ones as well, so there's a little element of a lottery there as well. And I think in the league final, Michael Ryan was ultimately forced to put Pádraig Maher full back, and I think games like this where because there's so many games and you've a chance to learn, I think after 2 or 3 games Tipperary might have their best team out, and then we start seeing, okay, these are all Ireland challengers here again. I mean, they have the players, certainly.
I like the over 49.5 because I think Tipper adopting the Brazil mentality of whatever you score, we'll score more, and we're not that worried about what we concede, we'll just score more than you. So I think that's a decent bet.
Cork Clare then, lads. How do you see that going?
Yeah.
You have a strong opinion on it, Leon.
Yeah, I do fancy Cork.
So they're going to hammer them off air there.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, listen, they're slight favourites, not as strong as Tipperary are to beat Limerick, but they're 8-11, but they're only -1 at evens. Now, I think if you fancy Cork, I think you've got to be looking at the -1, because you don't want to be risking more to win less. And I think to double your money -1, I think Cork had a very, very strong challenge last year. A couple of little things just went against them. I think they can. I'm not saying they'll win the All-Ireland. I don't think they're there yet. But Clare at the minute, I've been a little bit disappointed with Clare. They're 11-8 to win the game. No, I'm gonna back Cork myself. I'm gonna have a good go at Cork -1.
So what are the rest of your bets here? What are you fancying?
I haven't a clue about this Cork team. If Cork had the same management team this year that they had the previous year, I'd be all about Cork. I would be actually predicting them to win this game as well. But I just don't know if Myler knows exactly what his best team is, what his style of play is, what the team's identity is, who his leaders are just yet. I know he was part of the setup and everything, but it doesn't feel like there's been a consistency. It felt like there was too much chopping and changing in the league for me. So if I was going to have a bet on this, I would wait and see how it's going. And even if Clare get a lead and Cork are hurling well, I would still back them at that point. But I could also see this Clare team bursting out and winning it. So I would be keeping my money away from this one today.
There's definitely doubts about Cork. I can't help but think if Kieran Kingston thought that they were going to be able to go a step further or get to an All-Ireland, that he would have stayed on regardless. That's just my own opinion. So I think.
Did he not just say he was always just in it for 2 years? Did he not just
Apparently his job is mental as well.
Okay.
His work situation.
I think categorically he stated it will only be a 2-year stint no matter what happens. Now maybe, as you said, if he thought they were going to win an All-Ireland, maybe he would have given it one more year, but I thought he was in for 2 and he left after 2, and that was it.
So Kilkenny against Offaly. I think it's an 11-point spread here.
What are you picking, Cork and Clare?
I think Cork will win it. I don't think Clare are an All-Ireland challenger, other than 2013.
I mean, you think Cork are? That's the difference.
Not necessarily. I think they have the players to do it, definitely. Will they? We're not sure yet, because at the end of the league, you're unsure of where John Myler has them.
Yeah.
But Clare, I mean, other than 2013, they haven't done anything this past 12, 13 years. So I need to be convinced. But just moving on to Kilkenny, Offaly, 11-point spread. Do you think Kilkenny will cover that?
Well, I do. I mean, we were just chatting about again, I was watching you live tweeting the Offaly game, and you were clearly very impressed with them in that first 39, 40 minutes. But at that point, Galway woke up, and that was the first time we'd seen Galway awake since last year's All-Ireland, really. They kind of cruised through the league. It was fits and starts for them. Kilkenny, on the other hand, came into the Dublin game with a lot of people saying, oh, genuine All-Ireland contenders again. And they'll have been stung by the fact that, you know, they didn't perform well. And yet, on the other side, they'll also have this weird Kilkenny confidence that comes from, well, we're still Kilkenny. Look, we just killed you in the last minute. Yeah. But they'll have a better team out from the start, I think, against Offaly.
Paul Murphy and Colin Fennelly.
And they'll be looking to go, we're back. I think that, like, the stat you mentioned about them not scoring from play for so long, I think the fact that there was a job done to a certain extent on TJ Reid, that's not going to happen again. The Offaly won't be able to do what the Dubs did, and I think that they're going to come out and try and skin Offaly as a...
Will you be skinned? Quickly now, because we're going to move on to the next game.
I hate even hearing that, but there's always that fear. Yeah, last time we went down there, as you said, it was
26 points.
26 points, yeah. There is that fear. I think we're a lot better organised and we're a lot fitter.
Definitely.
And we've a
really
better
good
15 and we've a good manager, yeah. I think it'll be under 11. Kilkenny could win convincingly and be 7 or 8 the whole way up and just maintain that, but I think it'll be under 11.
It's going to be... I mean, the handicap here is going to be tight.
Yeah, whoever makes your odds and handicap, they're nearly always on the ball. Like those ones where you're teetering between, is it going to be 10 or is it going to be 12? And that's where you might 11.
I know. Look, I think Offaly will take a bit of heart from what the Dubs did, and I think if you can frustrate Kilkenny, as Dublin certainly did, yes, it's not going to be entertaining to watch it, but you're there to try and get a result. I don't know. I think Offaly, I'd be with you, Michael. I think they might just come under the 11 points. But I think here, our championship special of a goal inside 10 minutes, I think that will click in Kilkenny against Offaly.
And what about Wexford against Dublin? I wouldn't be shocked if there was no goal here, because at either end of the field you're going to have a spare man. Wexford haven't beaten Dublin since 2008, so there's a 5-point handicap, I think, is there, Liam?
5 points, yeah. I think Jeremy made a good point off air that the Dubs have had a match, a championship match.
I think this matters.
It's bound to stand to them. But I do know that they were very disappointed with how the game finished against Kilkenny, so they'll have to get themselves back up for it. I'm sure they will under Gilroy. He's a master man manager. But 5 points, I think Dublin will definitely come under 5 points.
The last time they met in Wexford Park, that was the famous constipated hurling quote from Gerald McNair.
Was there a goal that day?
No one knows.
I think there was one apiece, yeah.
Was there?
Yeah,
well, so if you think there's going to be no goals, 10-1.
10-1, no goals.
I think that's not a bad bet.
I mean, you certainly wouldn't be back in Wexford at 1-3.
No, they'll both have a target man in Conor MacDonald and Liam Rush at either end. So if good ball goes in, all bets are off. But I don't think it's the worst bet in the world. Just a quick prediction: who's going to win this game?
I think the Dubs have a really good chance. I think they're going to go much closer than people think.
I think Dublin +5 is my bet.
Yeah.
I think Wexford will win by 6.
Wow.
I'll go with the -5, yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on to the football, and we obviously want to finish off on Tyrone Monaghan. That's the big one. But Armagh against Fermanagh, it's going to be an absolute grind, isn't it, Leon?
Yeah, Ulster football is a pure grind, isn't it, really?
Well, don't dismiss the whole province there, but okay.
No, but I'm saying you wouldn't be tuning in like looking for a high-scoring encounter. Armagh, maybe I should be sticking up for Armagh because the boss is from there, but look, maybe Armagh will beat Fermanagh.
They should, yeah.
Should beat them.
Yeah, open, free-flowing football, Ger.
I just think McGeeney has a horrific record in opening fixtures of championship. As a Kildare supporter, we know this.
They lost to Wicklow, wasn't
struggle. They lost more than once in the
2008 against Wicklow or something.
Yeah, the first year they ended up getting through the qualifiers all the way back. So I don't know. I'd say that one. I mean, you wouldn't be terribly surprised to see if that ends up a draw, point in at the end. Even though Armagh clearly heading in the right direction, made great progress in the league, but
and it's no surprise to ever see, like if you're looking at draw betting, it's always the shortest price in Ulster football. Always, like it's 7-1 here. Normally a draw is around 9-1, 10-1. So it's no surprise that it's only 7-1.
I remember the good old days when
so,
it was 15-1, but then you all come down to it.
Yeah. So, you know, I would say whatever the point total is, I'm just trying to get it at the moment, I would say it'll probably be under it.
Fermanagh last beat Armagh in the championship in the 2004 All-Ireland quarter-final.
Yeah, I remember that actually. Yeah.
Denying us a proper Kerry Armagh game.
Yeah.
Properly when both teams were at their peak.
So we won't dwell too long on Limerick Clare, but one thing I will say, most people will say Clare will win this handy, and they're fairly tight odds at best.
4-1 on.
But in the last 3 times, they've met them in the last 3 seasons, and they've won by 2 points, 3 points and 1 point. So maybe the whole...
Yeah, traditionally they were both in Division 4, and it was 13-12 to Clare or 12-11 to Limerick. So, but Clare have pushed on a good bit in the last couple of years, but still, like going at 1-4 is can be fairly prohibitive now.
Away from home,
are
you back in the Clare footballers 4-1 on? Not with anybody's money.
Yeah, you'd probably take Limerick plus 4 at 11-10.
Plus 4.
I think at home, I think Limerick with 4 points. I'm not saying they'll beat Clare, but I think they should cover that spread.
I conversely think if Clare are going to win, I wouldn't go at 1-4. I'd go with the
-4.
Yeah.
And then Tipperary Watford. I think Tipperary are going to coast home here, and then it's just a short week turnaround to Cork. Then
it's a mad scenario, really, isn't it? Like they're going to be playing week on week where no other football team would be dreaming of that. But they'll just be hoping to get through without any injuries or anything like that.
And what's the handicap?
The handicap there, Tipperary are 1-50, so it's -13. At 11-10.
Can you offer us value anywhere on that one?
Well, look, Tipperary will win and they will comfortably. I think when you start trying to get a handicap past double digits, it becomes very, very tricky because
Tipper are going to score goals. Like
Quinlivan and Sweeney.
They could score 3 or 4 goals in this game. You know?
Yeah, they could.
Yeah, and Paul White is probably Waterford's best player. He's out as well. He has a bad hip injury.
It's always a worry when it's a big spread. Like if they're ahead by 10 or 11. The foot comes off the gas a little bit.
Especially with Cork next week.
So I tread carefully back in -13 there now.
So we'll go to the big one in football then. Back to your favourite province, Ulster. Tyrone versus Monaghan.
The draw is 15-2.
Yeah. Okay, let's start there. So.
Well, the draw is 15-2 again, similar to the Armagh game, 7-1. This is 15-2. Interesting, a few of the comments coming out about Tyrone. They don't like playing here. They're 4-7 favourites. I have to say I was very disappointed with Tyrone in the semi-final of the All-Ireland last year.
Shocking.
Yeah, you know, when I thought coming into that game, I mean, like as a Dublin fan, I was expecting a real test. I was actually very nervous. I thought Tyrone could have turned Dublin over, but I think as soon as Dublin got ahead early, their whole mindset from a Tyrone perspective was, we can't pull them back here. And for the rest of the game, it just looked that way. Against Monaghan, they're not up against the same firepower that Dublin possess. But, you know, like if Monaghan got a good start, they could put it up to Tyrone. They're 15-8, getting 2 points in the handicap at 10-11. This would be a very close game.
Yeah. Mickey Hart's won 6 of his 7 games, championship games against Monaghan. Conor McManus is probably the best inside forward in the country, give or take. Definitely in the top 3. Ger, what way are you going?
I don't know. Like I don't fancy this Tyrone team. But yet people who've watched them closely say that there's been an evolution in style and that they've learned from last year. That's not really the stories that have been coming out from. Like Kavanagh was doing media this week. He said to Owen a couple of months ago there was no plan B against the Dubs. That Mickey Hart interview with Keith Duggan where he was what did he call? Was it a bad agent when the goal gets scored by your mate when Con goes up and scores the goal? It's like, oh, he should have went back defending. You're like, don't really understand how the game is working there if you're actually saying that. So I don't know. I'd love to see Monaghan turn them over because it would give that championship a huge lift. And 15-8 about Monaghan in Ulster football, I think, is not a bad price.
And maybe no goal.
Maybe no goal. I think there's a hangover there from last year, and I don't see there have been much of an evolution or Stephen O'Neill's influence that much. And Monaghan have Conor McCarthy now, who's after bursting onto the scene to have a third forward that can score, and maybe Fintan Kelly as well, which makes it 4, taking a lot of the load off Conor McManus. I think Monaghan can spring.
We had somebody on the AM show saying that they had seen the influence of O'Neill, that there's a diagonal ball that was kind of the famous ball that they would have been on, because obviously he was at the end of it, and that they would switch play quite a lot, and they had great kick passers. And he said that over the league there has been enough of an influence that you can begin to see that pattern emerging, and if they whip that out against Monaghan, and suddenly Monaghan are going, geez, we haven't seen this in 10 years, and their players are inexperienced, then you can see Tyrone suddenly re-emerging as a team who are a legit top 4 team as opposed to the pretend top 4 team that they have been for the last couple of years.
So it's going to be a brilliant weekend, lads. Thanks very much to Michael, to Leon and to Ger as well. We've got people at all the grounds this weekend. At Cork versus Clare, we've got Tommy Walsh down at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. We've got Oisín Langan at Nolan Park for Kilkenny Offaly. Dave McIntyre and Donal O'Grady are going to be at Limerick Tip, and Stephen Doyle will be at Dublin versus Wexford. So that's all from us. We're back every Friday here with the Off the Ball hurling show. You can catch us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Periscope. Enjoy the weekend's hurling, and we'll see you next Friday at 12:30.